My name is Sid Khosla. I run America's banking and capital markets for EY.
Obviously, EY is very well known, but for those that haven't studied EY in great detail, can you give us a little bit of a flavor of your breadth and depth of your operation?
Sure thing. The simplest way of describing EY is we're a firm that works with our clients to generate transformative outcomes for them. And we do that across multiple areas, right from strategy to transactions to performance improvement, significant managed services, and that's something we're very, very proud of. We've got a global footprint, over 400,000 employees, and some of the biggest clients in the world.
And I think a lot of people know that you're in taxation, but perhaps not as obvious for some people is the fact that you do management consulting and provide help and services to big financial institutions. So thinking about banks in particular, what, in your mind, in your experience, what are the top 3 things keeping banks, CEOs awake at night?
There's a lot going on. I'd say number 1 is just the macroeconomic and geopolitical environment. Now, there's a lot of complexity in that. There's a lot of new developments every day. Right? The administration has a view from a U.S. standpoint. Globally, there's a lot of change. So just especially if you think about the global financial institutions, there's a lot of uncovering of what the right path in the future is. So that's definitely keeping a lot of CEOs I talk to up at night. It's also, the environment is also getting significantly tech dependent. And with that comes threats, with that comes bad actors. So there's a lot of focus and discussion on how to keep infrastructure and business services resilient, how to be ahead of cyber threats and be resilient as a business. And then I think the third thing I would say is there is a question of growth. The question of growth is back. The last few years, it's been, we started with COVID, and then the interest rates were lower. Now that environment has changed, so margins are compressing. New product growth is important. A lot of things are happening in banking. You think about cryptocurrency, private credit, digital assets. So growth is top of mind.
So thinking about products, building on that then, and thinking about technology or innovation, what are the key areas that banks are focusing on right now? I mean, from the sounds of it, there's so much going on, but what would be the key areas that are sort of standing out now in terms of being looked at or worked at or most actively being pursued from an innovation perspective?
Sure. So look, the perennial question on efficiency still is very center stage for challenges banks are trying to overcome. And how to leverage technology differently, some of the new developments in technology, whether that's AI or agentic and multi-agents, and how that adds efficiency to the business, I think that's a very, very important and a big challenge for institutions. I also think there is a big question and discussion around what it means to talent and workforce. And some of the CEOs and executives I talk to are very both curious as well as nervous about what the workforce of the future looks like. So as they think about their organizations, their operating models, and their talent, they're trying to get a sense of what does the workforce of the future look like. Is it a pyramid? Is it a diamond? Is it something else? So I think that's a major conversation as well.
So double clicking on that, and I know we were focusing on innovation, but actually talking about people is kind of essential because it sort of goes hand in hand, I suppose.
Yeah.
So what do you think banks are thinking about doing from an organizational perspective? Is it slimming it down? Can Gen AI now replace people? Can customers service themselves? Or because you talked about efficiencies, can you bring it to life with an example of how people innovation is manifesting itself?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. So maybe the first thing I'd say is I think the focus on agility in organizations is becoming super critical. How do you create organization models that enable faster decision making? The decisions at the right levels in the organization where the right data is. I think that's paramount. That's very, very important. On the AI question, look, I think, and I use this term a lot, I think AI is going to be a Darwinian journey. We've started talking about multiple use cases, what generative AI is bringing in. We're rapidly advancing into agentic AI. We're going to start significantly, my clients are talking about multi-agent scenarios. So deciphering what that means in terms of not just use cases, but also the combination of proprietary data that these institutions have, combining with the context of public data, and how that could be a significantly monetizable asset. I think those are the two things that are primary.
And thinking about those or any else that comes to mind, what do you think will materialize in practice the quickest? What will we as consumers maybe notice, or maybe you as an advisor or the banks themselves internally sort of notice? Is there any particular standout sort of quick win or low-hanging fruit type technology implementation or project?
Yes, sure. Now, look, I think in the short term, you're going to see a lot of focus on customer service, a lot of focus on automation of processes, a lot of focus on connectivity around data through AI. And that's going to lift the efficiency question. It's going to make the experience better. Longer term, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's going to be about monetization of that proprietary insight and data that these models can generate, clubbing it with publicly available data. That's where the dollars are longer term.
And what could, if you have an example in mind, combining internal data, like what do you think they can do with that data in the future that they aren't not able to do today?
I'll give you a simple example, right? All industries or most industries globally have consumers or a layperson as their consumer, right? Now, banks have a very good understanding of a consumer's credit profile. They have a very good understanding of the risk profile as far as finance is concerned. But then there's publicly available data around social media profiles and other elements and dimensions of a consumer. And when you start bringing those facets together, right, obviously respecting all privacy issues, it just creates a very powerful view of an end consumer, and it helps you build products and services that are very, very impactful. I mean, that's one example of it. There's numerous examples that would make sense there.
So thinking about the people within the bank, specifically the leadership, you must have met some great thought leaders and innovators and people that get stuff done. And you're a catalyst, you're supporting that. But you must also have seen banks where perhaps change is slower, or people are not as fast forward moving as quickly as maybe some would like. What do you think separates an efficient change agent within the bank, or a technology or innovation leader within the bank?
Sure. I mean, the funnest part of my job is meeting these people. So thanks for asking that. Look, I think the clarity of vision of where an institution is heading is by far the most important factor in how agile they are, how innovative they are. Because once you know the North Star you're heading to, you can operate in a different way. I'd say that's number one. The second thing I'd say is the openness to be challenged. And it's a cultural thing. Sometimes in larger banks, there is some inertia. But I will say, I mean, I think, and I've served the fintech industry since it started, 10, 12 years ago, that term was coined, and banks for more than 20 years. I think banks have become a lot more agile, right? I think they're looking at different operating models. They're looking at arm's length models for new capabilities. They're being very open to include new outside-in perspectives on their leadership teams. I work with a financial institution that has, I want to say, turned around about 40% of their leadership team with new infusion, especially from fintech firms, and that's making progress.
So on the whole fintech side of things then, how do you keep up to date with what's hot and up and coming and trending in the world of new startups in the fintech world?
Yeah.
Or is it the clients that bring you on board that tell you, hey, listen, we have looked at these 3 companies, can you help us partner with them or integrate? Like which way does it come from, and how do you make sure you stay on top of?
Sure, it comes from all areas. Like, so, for example, some of my background is in the fintech space. I was a founder myself. And those networks and those communities are very, very powerful platforms. And we tap into those. We fund some of those. We look at specific ones that make sense for certain clients and things like that. So that's number one. Number two, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, EY runs a program called Entrepreneur of the Year. We run it globally. We run it in every country. We run it in every geography in country. That's a huge fertile ground for us to understand the innovation going on at the entrepreneur level, and we tap into that a lot. And then we've got programs with our clients where we collectively collaborate on holding the right kind of idea generation sessions where we open it up to firms who want to come in, solve a problem for that. It's almost like reverse innovation in a way, and then we fund those.
So one challenge that a lot of banks have about working with small fintechs is that the small fintechs might be risk averse. They don't have the amount of resources that maybe the banks expect in terms of governance and stuff like that. How do you think, what examples have you seen where small, nimble fintechs can successfully collaborate with a slow, big, risk-averse financial institutions? Maybe not specific names, but I don't know, specific patterns of behavior or understanding of approach or methodology?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. So look, I mean, I would say the number one factor that I have seen that makes these partnerships successful is the clarity on the customer problem you're trying to solve. Far too often we see shiny objects and people want to invest there and create partnerships, but with not enough focus on sustainable client problems that you're solving. I'd say that's number one. The second piece is openness. Like I said, openness on both parties to realize that there's going to be a degree of agility and fast-moving innovation that's going to come in from, let's say, a fintech, but also the robustness of operating in a regulated environment that's going to come in from a big institution. And I almost think of this as a third culture you form by bringing those two things together. And then the third thing, I've seen partnerships be the new M&A. That's a really good way of making sure a big institution is starting to infuse the right kind of innovation fabric into the firm.
Anything else you want to add when we think about banks and how they think about innovation, how they collaborate with fintechs? Anything we haven't touched on that you think is important to get out?
Maybe the only other thing I'd say is, look, I think especially in the US, we have a lot of banks. We have over 4,300 banks. I think that's about 3,000 too many. So what we believe is going to happen, especially as you think about where interest rates are, where some of the challenges related to technology cost is, regulatory affairs are, I think the time is right for some degree of consolidation in this segment, which is a great opportunity for banks that are clear about where they want to head. It's also a great opportunity for fintechs to know how they want to participate in this consolidation. Is there an opportunity to create utilitarian technology for a major amount of this portfolio? Is there infusion of innovation they want to do in the forward-looking banks as they think about scaling? So it's very exciting times.
Sid, thank you very much for your perspective. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.